Good morning and welcome back to Aliyah Yomi. Today we're going to be learning Emor Sheni, the second Aliyah in Parshas Emor. Our Aliyah is a longer one of 25 psukim, and it runs from Perek Chof Aleph Pasuk Tes Zayin to Perek Chof Beis Pasuk Tes Zayin. It is on the topic of eating holy. Let's take a look at a basic overview. The first section of our Aliyah deals with the restriction of Kohanim who are Baalei Mumim. A priest who has some sort of physical defect may not serve in the Beis Hamikdash. We're told Lo Yigash Lahakriv, such a person may not approach to serve. But, however, he may Lechem Elokov Mikodshei HaKadoshim HaKadoshim Yochel, he may eat the holy breads. We then hear about the next section in our Aliyah, and that is about a person who is in a state of impurity. That person may not eat the kodesh, the kodshim. So we hear about a person who has his tumah on him, a person who's in a state of impurity, and the examples are given. A person is a tzarua, suffering from leprosy, zav, another spiritual defect. In such a person may not eat the kodshim, may not eat the holy things. And any person who becomes impure by coming into contact with the dead, or a person who has a seminal emission, shechras zera, a person who touches a sheretz, some sort of creepy crawly that has impurity, all these things, the person will have a certain state of impurity, and during that time a person may not come in contact or eat the holy things. We also hear that in a vela and a trefa, a person who consumes a animal which dies not through the process of ritual slaughtering, or may have been slaughtered correctly but was going to die, then a person will become impure by doing that. We also hear about that a zar, a person who is not a kohen, may not eat kodshim. The kohen may eat kodshim, certain holy things, but a person outside the tribe may not. However, somebody who is connected to the kohen, whether it be their wife or those who live in their household, do become part of the umbrella of the kohen, of the extension of his holiness. And a person who will eat kodshim by mistake, bishkaga, such a person who eats truma or kodshim by mistake, they will pay a chamishisav yosef alav, they'll have a fifth extra to pay back as a knas, as some sort of penalty to the kohen. And the Bnei Israel are warned about not being mechalel, not making empty the kodshei Yisrael, the holy things of Israel. A lot of very interesting points to think about, just one or two to focus on right now. Number one is, why does a blemish disqualify a kohen? Why should a physical blemish disqualify a holy person? Sefer HaChinuch, in explaining this mitzvah, explains a very important idea, and that is lefi sheroiv pu'ulos b'nei adam. Most actions of human beings, ritzuyos el lev ro'ehem, are amenable to those who see them, lefi chashivus osehem, depending on the impression or the level of the person who is performing them. And therefore, when a person appears good or important, b'mar'ehu v'tov ma'asav, in their appearance and in their actions, yimsachein v'seichel tov b'chol asher yaseh b'nei kol ra'av, that automatically gains an impression or acceptability by those who witness that person doing it as well. And if not, there's always a sense of demeaning or misunderstanding by those who are onlookers. So there's an element of their representing God, and it needs to be done in a way which is beyond question, which is beyond doubt, which is although yes, it is an external view of a person to look at their body, but there is a societal perspective which looks at the perfection, the symmetry, and if there's complexity there, it detracts. Naturally, as much as we tell ourselves that it doesn't, it detracts to a certain degree. Again, the Sefer HaChinuch is not explaining why the mitzvah is, but is giving a taste as to why it could be as well. The Klei Yakar takes it from a different direction, and he explains that any spiritual, any physical defect which a person will not inherit, not that they're born with, but through life, that will happen to a person, many of them can be a product of a spiritual negative cycle of actions. So, for instance, he talks about how the spiritually guided people can know that by looking at a person's face, what perhaps ailments, what actually had happened as well. So, for instance, A person who's going blind, God forbid, certain spiritual masters can say that could be as a relationship of a person who is lokach shochad, a person who took bribes, as the Torah tells us spiritually, that person is going to be blinded, but it means to say even perhaps physically as well. A person who's has some sort of problem with their foot might be as a relationship to ga'ava, to arrogance. A lot of ideas that spiritually speaking can be related to, it relates a spiritual phenomenon to a physical outcome. So it could be related to that as well. And those who are not experts do not have opinions in this matter, but nonetheless that's another angle of this. The Bas Ayin, a Chassidic sefer on the Torah, does point out that perhaps the word mum, which means a blemish, is also the gematria of the numeric value of the word Elokim, which is Hashem's name of judgment. And that means to say that any Bitcoin who has yesh by mum, which means to say that he carries with him the perspective of God, which is through the lens of judgmentalness, Hashem's as a judge. That person will not be able to serve in front of Hashem, because a person who walks around being judgmental of others will never really be able to embrace others in a real way. Will never really be able to serve Hashem fully and properly. That's perhaps more of an esoteric idea over here as well. Now, why is that there kares, excommunication for somebody who brings a korban in a state of impurity? The Bechor Shor points out, Rav Yosef Bechor Shor, that note that the Baal Mum, a person who has a physical blemish which disqualifies them as a kohen from serving the Beis Hamikdash, may still eat the kodshem, but a person who's in a state of impurity may not even eat the kodshem, which means that a state of impurity which is caused by action is very severe. You can't even eat the holy things. A person who's in a state with a wound or a blemish may not be their fault. In that case, they may be disqualified from service, but they are not disqualified from eating from the holy things as well. Finally, one last question is, why is it that the Kohanim are in charge of making sure that the rest of Bnei Yisrael, the Zar, the one who is a foreigner to the state, the tribe of Kohuna, may not eat the Kodshem? The Kedusha slave of Levi Yisroel Berdichov, in his commentary on the Torah, does point out a very interesting point, and he says that if you have a king who has a palace, he's not just going to let the hoi polloi into the palace at all. They don't know how to conduct themselves. They don't know how to have the proper dignity for the chambers of the king at the king's palace. They're going to talk about it in loud voices. They're going to walk on the carpets in a way which is improper. They're going to spit on the floor. They just don't know what they're doing. So only the king's dignitaries who are brought up and schooled in the right types of schools and understand what it means to be a king and have respect for a king, those types of people will be allowed into the palace. But it will also be their job to ensure that the hoi polloi don't get there as well. And that's what's being said over here. The Kohanim are, in a certain sense, Hashem's inner guard. They're the ones who are in charge of looking after the Mikdash, because they understand the severity of the Kedusha of the Mikdash, which is why they have many restrictions in their own lives, as we've been learning in our Aliyos, in the Parshas Emor. And that also includes their responsibility to the king to ensure the posterity, the pristine nature of the place that they serve in, that is the Beis Hamikdash, which is why they are not allowed to let in Bnei Yisrael. The Kedusha Levi does end with a very interesting observation. He says that's why it's important to always be humble. It's important to always know one's station in society. And he says that it's important to understand, when it comes to spiritual things, B'Shamayim Mimal, that we always need to look upwards. We always need to say that I'm not there yet. There's so much more I need to go to grow. When it comes to physical things, Al Aretz Mitachas, we look down and we say, oh wow, look, I got this job. That's incredible. That's more than anything else. I don't need to look at other people who got better jobs. Look at this. There's people on the street who are poor, who have nothing. I'm so lucky. When it comes to the spiritual, we always look upwards. When it comes to the physical, we always look downwards. Downwards means to say that there's so many other people we're better than. When it comes to the spiritual, we always look up and say, well, there's so many people we are not good enough yet and therefore we have to aim higher, aspire higher. The Mishkan is the place where those who are in Hashem's inner circle are in charge to make sure that the Mishkan is treated in the most correct way. With this, we conclude the second Aliyah in Parshas Emor. In the meantime, have a wonderful and meaningful day.